And Mark, just take us to that moment because you had an unimaginable, unthinkable tragedy happened to your daughter, Allie. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, well, it was 4th of July weekend in 2020, and my wife and I and our two youngest kids were on our way to church. I was set to preach that morning, and Turkey's about 8 hours ahead of the United States, so we were on our way to church, and my wife just decides, let's call Allie, our daughter, who was living in Dallas at the time, and see how she's doing. We knew she would be awake late because it was 4th of July weekend, and she had told us she would be out with her friends. And so we called. It would have been about 1:30 in the morning in Dallas, and the sheriff's deputy answered her phone. And when a officer answers your child's phone, you know immediately that something is wrong. And so we pulled the car over while he verified our identification, or I verified who we were. And then he informed us that our daughter had been involved in a serious accident. She was in critical condition and had been air flighted to the emergency room. So we immediately put my wife on an airplane to the States, and she was on a layover on her way when she called the doctor, and the doctor informed her that they had taken our daughter in for an MRI and hadn't found any brain activity. And so when she arrived at the hospital, the nurse informed her that they had declared our daughter dead. And so that put us on a path that we obviously had never expected to be on. We really knew what we were doing, and we had a pretty good idea of where we were headed, and we'd been doing this for 20 plus years. And suddenly everything really was shattered in our lives, and we didn't know where it was going to take us.
Just hearing, Mark, about just that shattering in your heart and not understanding or knowing in just a moment, in an instant. Your beautiful daughter, Allie, we just had pictures. We have a few more pictures to show. There she is. Such a beautiful spirit. And one thing I appreciate, Mark, in your book, you shared about even the kingdom impact and the legacy she left behind, even when she passed away. Can you tell us about that and how God moved even after when she passed away?
Yeah, we had about 3 or 4 days by her bedside because we had agreed for her to be an organ donor. And so while they got all of that in order, we took those 3 or 4 days to pray down heaven and believe in a resurrection, believe that she would be restored. And we had people, literally thousands and thousands of people all around the world and on every continent in the world praying for her. And we have, after her passing, we have testimony after testimony of God calling people back into relationship with him through their time of praying for Allie. We have people that have been called back into ministry that had left ministry because of hurt and pain and grief and disappointment, that God called back into ministry. So the impact, we're still, even today, we receive emails constantly from people saying how the story of Allie has impacted their lives and has put them on a different course.
It's so beautiful what God, even in the midst of the pain and the suffering, that what he's brought about with the kingdom impact. And something, I know when we go through loss and tremendous loss, we have a lot of what ifs. And something that you talk about is, processing the pain and about the what ifs. And I like what you said. You said, what if things turn out better than I imagined? What if God does something amazing and unexpected? What if I put my trust in the only one who can see the beginning from the end and everything in between? Can you talk to us about that for a moment and how God began to reveal that in your heart and in your spirit as you've been journeying through grief?
Yeah, and I like how you use the word journey because that's what it is. So many times we want to think that there's going to be an end to what we do and an end to this grief. We love the phrase, time heals all wounds. I have not, at this point in the journey, found that to be the case. The reality is that God did not create suffering. I do not believe that God just woke up one morning and said, well, it's time for Allie to come home. So she's going to have an accident. That's not how God works. We live in a broken world, and in a broken world, things break, and we all have choices to make, and sometimes those choices end in tragedy. But the thing that's so beautiful about the kingdom of God is that for him, there are no mysteries. For us, we have to learn to live in the mysteries. But for him, there are no mysteries. He knows the beginning from the end, and he knows everything in between. And so he's not surprised by our poor choices, and he's not surprised by the things that break, because he has a plan and a purpose already in place if we'll just give room for that. If we'll give room to the disappointment, and we give room to the grief, then what God does is he uses those things to direct us and to move us into places that we never dreamed of being. And they're going to be better, actually, than we ever dreamed, because God doesn't he there's nothing in him and the things that he does that is normal or average, or, well, this is as good as it gets. That's not how he does things. It's always better. It's always higher elevation. It's always increase. It's never decrease in his plan and in his kingdom. So if we will begin to recognize that, then even in our grief and even in our disappointment and our most tragic losses, we can be at peace knowing that somewhere in this journey, he's going to do something that's going to absolutely blow our minds. It's going to be greater and better than we ever expected, because he does see the beginning from the end.